Welcome to Candid Catholic Convos, a program brought to you by the Catholic Diocese of Harrisburg. Our mission is to humanize the Church and help you to grow in your faith, love, and understanding. I'm your host, Rachel Trochet, a cradle Catholic who's only human and struggled with faith on more than one occasion. Each week, you'll hear engaging, down-to-earth interviews and actionable strategies you can implement into your life with ease to help you grow closer to God. If you're ready to open your heart and step fully into the person God created you to be, then you're in the right place. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Candid Catholic Convos. It might sound weird, but I kind of love researching. Whether I'm working on a creative project at home or planning for this podcast, I have to do a lot of research, and I actually kind of like it. It's fascinating learning about certain histories or rituals or traditions, falling down that proverbial rabbit hole known as the internet. But too much of a good thing can sometimes be a bad thing, right? Too much research leads me to not enough time actually doing the thing. And it becomes this analysis paralysis of information gathering. This feeling of, I can't move forward because I don't have all the information yet. When it comes to discerning big life changes like getting married, changing jobs, moving to a new city, or contemplating seminary, we just need to take the first step. Then keep taking steps until we're either told to stop or change direction, or until we decide, I want to stop, I want to change direction. And the only way to know that is to actually get out and do the thing. For instance, I knew I wanted to be married, and I knew I wanted to be a mom. God had to show me who my husband would be, and I discerned that by dating. Dating is discerning marriage with someone. If I'd never dated, if I just continued researching dating etiquette and how to talk to boys, which I definitely did because, again, I like to research, I never would have opened myself up to the man who I would eventually get married to and have children with, the man that God had waiting for me after I dated all those others and discerned out of marriage with them. But Rach, how did you know? How could you be sure? And the truth is, I wasn't. Because honestly, we will never have all the information. We aren't meant to. That's why we have faith. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is famously quoted as saying, "You don't have to see the whole staircase. You just have to take the first step." Today, I have the very special privilege of introducing you to Deacon Cole Mase, one of our 3 transitional deacons about to be ordained to the priesthood. And we're going to be chatting about how he knew he was ready to take that first step. Deacon Mase, welcome to Candid Catholic Convos. I'm super excited to have you here and really excited for your upcoming ordination. I'm sure you're pretty pumped about that.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's definitely looking forward to it. It's coming up fast, finishing seminary and just a few more short weeks.
Right, the countdown's really on now. I love it. So tell me a little bit about yourself, especially for those who haven't had a chance to interact with you yet as part of the diocese. Where you're from, your home parish, parents, siblings, anything like that.
Yeah, so I am 29 right now, soon to be 30. My hometown is Palmyra, and I go to Holy Spirit Catholic Church there in Palmyra. That's my home parish. Basically, for most part, like elementary, high school, I was for the most part in public school, except for a little bit when I was in first grade. I was a Catholic school then, but for the most part, I was public school. I've been going to seminary at St. Charles Borromeo in Philadelphia for my whole time in seminary, and my parents are Pamela and Tom Mase, and I have one sister who's slightly younger than me named Kendra. So.
That's really cool. Would you say that you had a typical childhood, or did you do anything out of the ordinary, or tell me a little bit about what it was like growing up?
Yeah, I would say overall pretty typical. We originally lived up in the Allentown Diocese in Jim Thorpe. We moved to the Harrisburg Diocese into Palmyra when I was in second grade for my dad's job, and so I've lived here ever since. But, overall, I would say it was a very typical kind of situation growing up, just kind of a very normal household. Went through CCD growing up, and, just very normal overall.
That's pretty cool. I love when a childhood is just like this easy breezy thing that you can just like look back on with fondness and nostalgia. What about like you mentioned being a part of Holy Spirit in Palmyra? Did you participate in any like parish activities? Were you an altar server at all?
Actually, no, I was never an altar server.
Really?
Yeah, it's actually kind of interesting, like my journey to this point, in a lot of ways. I mean, like growing up when I was like younger, I, had thought about the priesthood, probably at my first Holy Communion type time. And like the idea came up and that idea would kind of like come and go, throughout the different years of my life and in different situations. But honestly, like I felt like I never really understood my faith. It was never really like personal to me in a way that I thought that it meant something. And it really wasn't until after I'd gone away to college and studied there for a little while, and then I was working afterward, that I really began to ask myself some big questions. And it was really then that I started to learn a ton about my faith. I started to really get into prayer and really get involved at the parish there at Holy Spirit. I was able to be very involved with the Knights of Columbus there, bunch of different like little like building projects and things that we did that were a lot of fun. And then also I was even on the parish council for about a year, so that was an interesting experience too. So had a little bit of a immersion into the parish council life there as well. But yeah, it's always been a really great parish and a lot of really great people there in Palmyra. So
That's awesome. So you mentioned having like working before going into seminary. What seminary, not cemetery? Oh my goodness. What type of work did you do prior to making this decision?
yeah, so when I got out of college, I had gone to Shippensburg University and I had studied political science. So I was really looking for a job, but like a lot of people coming out of college, it's like not easy to find a job in what you studied initially. So what I had to do was kind of just find stopgap kind of jobs as I was looking. So I ended up working for a little while. I ended up working at R&K Subs. So for people who probably have heard of that and the very famous fundraiser Subs, worked there for a little while. And then I worked actually at a Sheets, and I was even a shift manager there. So that was kind of interesting. And after that, I had a little bit of time up in Harrisburg where I finally got a job as a legislative monitor. So what I kind of did was I was kind of like a reporter. I would kind of just like sit around and like say what was happening and like who was, what they were talking about and, who was debating who and just kind of, that kind of stuff. So it was kind of interesting for a little while. And it was really at that time that I really started to grow in my faith and seek out that kind of deeper relationship with God.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you've really run the gamut in terms of like career. Like,
yeah, I've seen a little bit of everything there. No, but it definitely has been an experience and a lot of things that I remember from all that. So
yeah, and it'll absolutely inform, going forward, like your priesthood. I feel like that bringing all those experiences, like God put you there for a reason. So it'll come back. So when I was talking with Deacon Steitler, he was mentioning, we were talking about having that like God hitting you over the head with a frying pan moment versus like a gradual buildup. And you mentioned talking about you first started to feel like you had heard the call like around First Communion time, second grade. Was that like a constant nudge, or was it more like that's a thought, and then like later on it became more and more intense?
Yeah. I think like initially it was maybe more so like that was a thought. I specifically like really remember like kind of vividly my first communion in like a interesting way. I remember it was at Immaculate Conception Parish in Jim Thorpe because at the time we hadn't moved yet. And I remember it's an Irish parish, so they had some interesting like older Irish traditions, and so all the kids, when we came up for our first communion, we all knelt down on the step, and I was in front of the statue of the Blessed Mother, and they came around and they did like the enrollment with the brown scapular, and they gave you a rosary and they like wrapped it around your hands and they made you hold a candle, like a baptismal candle. And I guess someone told me that this is like a really like old Irish type of tradition that it doesn't really go on at all anymore, but it did there. And when they would come around, you would receive communion, and when you did, they would light the candle. And so you're there like holding the candle, like wrapped, you can't move your hands because you have the rosary wrapped around them, and you receive communion. And that was really when I remembered hearing kind of that like maybe God wants me to be a priest, like internally, right? Like maybe that's what I'm supposed to do. But I didn't really follow up on it, but it was kind of this like every so often it would come back, the idea. Yeah. Personally, like the head over the head moment really came, I think, while I was working in Harrisburg. I started going to the cathedral a lot because it was right there, and daily mass on my lunch break was convenient because it's at 12:05. So I was going, and one day I couldn't make it to daily mass. Something was going on up at the Capitol, and like I got caught, but the cathedral was still open, so I stopped in to pray. And I remembered like I was kind of starting to like struggle with like my job and what I wanted to do. And I was like, like, Lord, I really wish that I could just be here. I wish I could pray. Like, I remember saying that. And it was just this moment, like, from the tabernacle, like, almost, like, it wasn't audible, but it was, like getting hit in the chest, right? It was getting hit in the chest with, like, almost like a brick of a question. Why don't you?
Wow.
And that was it. And that scared me at the time. I was like, well, like, oh, no, like, I was supposed to be a priest. Like, it all kind of came back. And then I kind of, calmed myself down. But so I went, okay, Lord, like maybe that's you. Maybe this is what you want me to do. I'm going to look into this and see, like, is this even possible? Right. I'm out of college. I'm working. I'm further along. Like, is it even a thing that you could still become a priest? Like, I didn't know. And then on top of that, I was kind of like, I'm also just going to like keep praying and doing what I'm doing for like the next month. And like, if it doesn't go away or it gets bigger, then I'll go talk to somebody, which later on I was told that was really insightful discernment. And I was like, well, I guess, the Holy Spirit does work sometimes, all the time, but definitely. So yeah, that was kind of probably the big moment for me. And then that kind of, propelled me forward to eventually talking to my pastor and then also with the vocation director, and then eventually heading off to seminary like the next year when it came back around. But yeah.
That's really cool. Now, would you say like of those people that you finally got around to talking to, were there any of them that were like super influential in helping you finally say, okay, I think this is what I'm supposed to be doing?
Yeah, I mean, definitely like my pastor at the time, Father Anthony Dill, was super awesome. I mean, it was a big help to me because like I was already nervous about it, but honestly, like in my experience, prior to him being at our parish as a younger priest, like in his 30s, most of the priests that I had ever met growing up were frankly older, and that's just the thing of like perception. Like as a kid, you're like, well, like priests are all old. Like I can't be a priest. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
But then you meet maybe a younger priest, and you're like, oh, like maybe this is a thing that like anybody can, anybody could be called to, and like you become more open to it. But also like talking with him, he was a big help and a really good mentor to me throughout the years, especially once I entered seminary as well. So always very appreciative of all that he did and does.
Yeah, that's always so important to just kind of have somebody in your corner, like cheering you on and just, helping you figure out like it's nice to have that validation that you're like you're on the right path. It's so important. So let's talk about some doubts you might have had, because I feel like you mentioned that, I remember this as growing up as well, as like all the priests seemed older, or like, I went to Catholic schools, so like anytime the priest walked in, it was like, shh, here he comes, here. Like they just carried this like presence with them, almost like they sat up on this pedestal. But then like the nice part about this job is I get to talk to all of you, and I'm like, they like sports like I do. They have siblings, they have parents. They're like, there's so much more that we have in common. That you guys are, for lack of a better term, you are real people. You're not like this holy thing that like that is not attainable. So talk to me about some doubts or concerns you might have had about following this path, or like what kind of stood out to you?
Yeah, I think that like one of the things maybe that comes to mind is obviously just, in our culture and in our day and age. I mean, it really is, certainly it's a countercultural decision to make, right? It's not going to be understood by many people. I would say even by and large, maybe by a lot of Catholics in the pews, they might not fully understand like what would drive a young man to want to become a priest. It's not always readily apparent. So I think that there's that initial kind of like fear that like I'm not going to be accepted in this, right? And I think every guy goes through that when they realize like, okay, I got to tell my parents about this, and I don't know 100% like how they're going to react. My parents were very supportive, and I'm very blessed and thankful for that. But you know, you never know how it's going to go. So like that's obviously a doubt and a nervousness about you know, how is family going to react? How are my friends going to react to this, right? You know, going forward from that, like once you kind of are discerning, you know, there's obviously those questions about ability, worthiness, because like I think we all come from a place where we all have struggles, we all have you know, different backgrounds, but like everyone just has these universal struggles, these universal, you know, hurts and wounds from their past, things that, you know, make coming to God both this healing experience, but it is a healing experience that we have to go through. And so I think like in that there's a lot of like, wow, like, you know, because priests, you know, to us, it's like, you know, priests, like they have to be very holy. They have to be, you know, truly men of God, and you want to be that. But I think it's often like, but can I be that?
Yeah.
Can I be that? Can God do that in me? So one of those initial doubts, I think, is a lot of like that, like self-strength. And that can often, you know, kind of go into seminary, and that's kind of a place where that gets worked out, where you realize that like, no, I can't actually. But God does work. He does a lot of work. And that really, I think, is the biggest blessing in overcoming those doubts, overcoming those fears, is the realization that, yeah, the bar is high. There is a reality there. But God's transforming power is enough. And it's a constant movement to accept that. You know, you start to know it in your head, but it's a constant growth in knowing that in your heart, and really allowing Him to enter in. So, yeah, I would say that's kind of some of my experience.
Yeah, I love that about how, you know, we might feel like we're not enough, but God is. Because that's a really great reminder, because in anything in life, I feel like we all struggle with, like, am I good enough? It's like, well, by yourself, no. But with God, of course. So talk to me about seminary. Like, did you find it foreboding at all? Or like, you know, having come from a different background, did you have any college experience before walking into seminary? Like, I know seminary isn't exactly like college. Like, you don't really get to choose your major, drop a major, or whatever. So talk to me a little bit about what it was like walking in. Did you have any misconceptions, anything like that?
Yeah, I think like walking in, it can definitely be, there can definitely be a nervousness there, and a kind of an anxiety even about it, because it is different, and like you realize it's going to be different. But there's also an excitement there too, because you know, you've made a discernment to enter, and you're ready to set off on that journey, and to see what it's all about. And honestly, like getting to seminary was a big moment for me when you really kind of get like some of those confirmations. You know, I remember my time there that one of the older seminarians, who was now a priest for the Archdiocese of Philadelphia, he met us. He was kind of my couple early day like mentor to show you around and that kind of stuff for orientation. And the first thing he did was, well, we'll come back, we'll get this stuff out of the car, like I'll help you guys move in, but first, like, let's go to the chapel, right? Like, let's go to the chapel, let's say a prayer quick. And so, you know, at St. Charles, he took us up to Immaculate Conception Chapel, which is just this beautiful chapel, and just saying a prayer there, and being able to really realize that, okay, this is God is here, and that we're going to be on that journey. But yeah, entering seminary, definitely, there can be kind of those like searching questions, like what is this going to be like? Because certainly it isn't like a normal college. In some ways it is, right? You make great friends, you have a good time. Guys, you know, they'll go play sports, they'll watch sports, guys will go to the gym. You obviously have classes and all that stuff. It definitely is a bit more regimented than a normal college, though, because we have responsibilities that aren't just classes, right? We have morning prayers. We have mass every day. We have evening prayer together, and as well as your own personal routine. And finding that and kind of getting into the groove of that can be one of those initial kind of shocks, but very rewarding environment once you get settled in there.
You got to take that first step, right? And then once you figure it out, you're golden. Yeah. I love that. So what do you think was probably your favorite part or like your biggest joys about this time? Because you spent a long time in seminary. Sure. How long were you there for?
So my time is 6 years total.
Wow.
So here in the next 2 weeks will be 6 years of in the academic formation at seminary. So
nice. So in those 6 years, what would you say has kind of stood out as like a highlight for you?
Yeah, I think that one of the big things has really been just like the spiritual growth. I think for me personally has been one of the highlights, in the sense that because we're in a more structured environment, and that it's an environment that is going to foster prayer and it's going to encourage that. I think that like finding that kind of relationship with God, and even that kind of joy of prayer, right, has been kind of a big highlight for me. Discerning seminary, I was kind of one of those, I'm like, well, one of the reasons why I was like, I don't know if I can be a priest, because like I don't just want to like pray all the time, was like one of the things. And that's really what I thought. And it turns out, like you said, like priests are normal people. But at the same time, as you go through formation, you realize that there's this deep joy in seeking out that communion with the Lord. There's a deep even longing for that, and it's from that relationship that really flows everything else. It really flows that that ability to interact with other people about the faith, all of those things. So for me, just kind of the spiritual formation aspect has always been probably closest to my heart, most certainly. So.
Yeah, I love that. It's just kind of, you have to start with a good foundation, and being able to build that foundation in a place that's like really giving you all the tools to do so must be fantastic. So what's something that you maybe didn't expect, or like something that surprised you about seminary?
Yeah, I think probably, honestly, one of the things that surprised me the most about seminary was just the people. The guys, everyone... at seminary, there are people there studying for the priesthood from all over the place. I mean, we have guys from, Lincoln, Nebraska at St. Charles. We have, obviously the Philly guys, the Arlington guys from up at Connecticut. There's a couple seminarians actually from Sri Lanka.
Wow.
And from Bangladesh and some other places as well. So you kind of get this mix of both cultures and reality in which they live. Mixing together, and oftentimes it's interesting to see that really what we have in common, at least initially, is just that faith. We're all here for the same reason, and that really creates like a camaraderie and a brotherhood that I think that you don't just expect before you've experienced it. Most people will say that it's hard to explain seminary to somebody who hasn't been to seminary, and it is, because once you've experienced it, there is a reality of that brotherhood. There is something that you've experienced that only so many other people have. And I think that was a surprise to me, just like how open and that ability to connect with all these different people with a shared faith. And of course, then as time goes on, you start to make friends and discover all those other things that you have in common. But yeah, definitely initially, I would say that was one of the most surprising things about seminary.
That's really cool. Just being able to get together with all these people from all different backgrounds, and you have that one thing in common, and then learning that you have other things in common. That's pretty powerful. Like, it's like, what's that saying? It takes a village. Like, yeah. you get to lean on all these other people who are all cheering you on. That's so impactful. So 6 years of seminary. How is what's different about the you that entered seminary 6 years ago versus the you that's about to be ordained in a couple weeks? And what's the same?
That's a good question. Yeah, I would say that I think definitely one of the things is that in seminary you definitely grow a lot as far as your your ability to relate to other people. I would say that's a big thing, which normally they refer to as like human formation. The human formation aspect, it's not so much of an active thing, like you sit in class or you take time for prayer or you have a pastoral assignment, but that aspect of how do you relate to other people, how do you learn from your mistakes. And in seminary, that is something that just kind of really, I think, is transformative for everybody. I think the guys that go in, like any like immaturity that's there, it just gets kind of, it gets like softened out by the time you're going through. And along with that, just kind of this confidence that kind of begins to come, at least with the things of the faith, not to say about everything. But you kind of gain like a confidence with interacting with other people, a freedom from fear, a greater love and a greater desire for those different things. And I think that that's like a big part of what has changed for me and grown in me. At the same time, like obviously there are things that like remain the same, right? So some things like, if whether it's I would say like one of the things like I do enjoy to read, and like I still enjoy reading, so I do. Right, and like that's just me. Yeah, so I would say like that's definitely remained the same. Going into seminary, I think that one of the things is that you have a lot of desire, and you don't really know how to channel that yet, like how to put that into effect in a way that's going to be both good for you and for others. And what seminary really does is it begins to teach you how to take all that energy and that love for God and that desire and apply that to your life.
We've unfortunately run out of time, but if you'd like to hear the rest of this episode, you can listen to us anytime on Spotify under Candid Catholic Convos, or you can download this episode from our website at hbgdiocese.org. Thank you so much for listening. Our goal at the Diocese of Harrisburg is to walk with you on your faith journey. So if this episode resonated with you in any way, the easiest way to show your appreciation is by sharing this program with your network or by leaving a review on your listening platform. You can also support us financially by making a donation online at hbgdiocese.org/DAC and clicking the Make a Donation button. Thanks again, and we'll see you at church on Sunday.